Playing a good conga solo can be very rewarding. That's why in this video, I'm sharing 10 tips for how to develop your conga solo ideas. Coming up. Hi, my name is Kevin Zahner, and if this is your first time on Rhythm Notes, please subscribe so we can help you level up your drumming today. Ernest Childers asks, could you please help with solos? Conga solos aren't all about chops. Some of the best ones are sparse, melodic, and develop using dynamics, themes, different variations, and establish a form that you can follow that just adds to the song. The more I thought about how to answer the viewer's question, the more tips I came up with for how to develop your conga solos. And if you want in-depth transcriptions and more explanation on these tips, go to rhythmnotes.net. I'll put a link to an article in the description below. Tip number 1, be patient. You can start off your solo with sparse, syncopated rhythms over the course of several measures. You don't have to come in killing it, although you can. You can come in killing it and then pull back a little bit. But really, it's cool to kind of test the waters, chip away at an idea, and develop it over the course of several measures at the beginning of a solo. If you're getting value out of this video, please hit that like button. And if you think someone else could get value out of this video, please share it with them. Tip number 2, use different sounds. There's 2 categories of sounds on congas. They're either closed or they're open. You're cutting off the sound and the resonance, or you're letting it ring. So for example, use open tones, open slaps, but also muted tones. Don't underestimate those muted tones for providing feel and some contrast in your ideas, and they will come through during a conga solo if you play them properly and with good projection, and maybe even with the right rhythm to help them chip through the layers of rhythm players that are also happening during your solo. Also consider playing a slap in one hand and an open tone in another. This kind of gives you a cool like ching bata sound, and it's really cool for developing louder accents that are also just different. It's more interesting. It's different than the normal tones and slaps on their own, because you're accenting something in a new way with a new timbre. Tip number 3, play with dynamics. Think about playing a roll that starts soft and gets much louder. If you play at the same volume all the time, whether it's too quiet or too loud, it'll start to sound like when someone's speaking or giving a talk in monotone.
Anyone?
Tip number 4, apply rudiments. One of my favorite rudiments to apply to a conga solo is the herta, which is just 4 strokes in a row in a certain rhythm. These sound good on downbeats, they sound good on upbeats, they sound good displaced over different rhythmic patterns over the course of several measures. You can play them with slaps, and you can play them with open tones, and you can play them with different combinations of slaps and open tones. Also consider combinations of slaps and tones to kind of establish rhythmic groupings like 4s or 3s. In the example that I'm going to show you now, it's going to have a slap and some open tones in groupings of 4 and then 3, and then it's going to resolve with quarter note triplets on slaps with 2 flams at the end. Another rudiment that you can apply and sound great. Tip number 5, use quinto parts and licks. Now, for those of you who don't know about rumba wawangko, for example, there are quinto parts and licks, there are segundo parts and licks, and salidor parts and licks. You're going to play different parts that are pretty set parts and phrases on the drums in relation to clave, but then there's also certain spaces where those drums get to improvise around those parts and with certain styles of improvisational form. Like with a quinto, which has the most amount of improvisation usually, there's a form that you can develop with those parts and licks. Now, this is pretty advanced. I'll do more videos on this in the future, but consider some of the quinto ideas that you might hear from maybe Los Muñequitos de Matanzas, and consider adding those parts and those sorts of phrases that span maybe 2 or 3 or 4 clave cycles into your conga solo. Tip number 6, call and response. This music is based on call and response. Clave itself is call and response. The call, the response. No matter which clave you're playing, it's a call and response. It's a this and a that. It's very binary in terms of its form. That comes from, most explicitly, from the West African music traditions that we get rhythms like clave. But it wasn't like it was totally foreign to the European music traditions, where in the choral traditions and in a lot of the different compositions, they had sort of a call and response or a responsorial or even antiphonal sort of setup, but that's getting way into musicology that I don't really want to talk about in this video. But think about call and response in terms of introducing an idea and then playing another idea that answers that idea. This brings us to number 7, play melodically. And at this point, a lot of what you've been doing is developing melody. Now think about the different pitches that you might have with your drums. You have tones and slaps, which give you 2 different sorts of pitches, and maybe you have 2 or 3 drums, which gives you several more ideas or possibilities to work with. Perhaps you can consider playing melodies like standard themes from jazz tunes, and then you can start to kind of work those themes in different ways. That brings us to number 8, themes and variations. So you establish a rhythmic or melodic theme, or both, usually both, and then you play little variations on those themes in a way that makes sense musically, that just sounds good. And don't forget, to make it sound good or make sense musically, usually you have to come back to something that someone already knows. And when it comes to improvising, maybe you change the rhythm a little bit, maybe you change the melody a little bit, but they still recognize that there's an overall theme happening, even though there's many different forms of that theme. Which brings us to tip number 9, play with song form. AABA is a common song form. Consider playing something, playing it again, play something a little different, and then go back to playing that first thing that you heard. It's good for the audience. It's good for developing music, and you don't have to play it all completely the same. You can do different things and apply themes and variations within each A section or the B section. You could even go way beyond that and get into like the Cole Porter approach to song form and have like A, B, and C, and go back to B and then C and then A. He does some really interesting things if you're into song form and things like that. But it's important to make sure you have something that makes sense, that develops and goes somewhere. It'll be more interesting for the listeners, and you'll develop a little bit more musicality and form to your solo. It'll make sense. It'd be like you're telling a story through your instrument, and you want people to remember certain things from that story. Tip number 10, have fun. Don't overthink any of these tips. Don't overthink your solo at all. You can blow these tips out of the water and just have total fun, or you can apply a few of them and start to develop your ideas, because like I said, it's fun and rewarding to have a good conga solo, a solo that makes sense, that's exciting, that develops, that gets the other rhythm section instruments excited as well. If you like this video and you want to watch more, check out this one suggested to you by YouTube, and check out this one suggested to you by Rhythm Notes. Please subscribe so we can help you level up your drumming today, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.